People are still coming into the webinar room. We're going to get started right now. It's Kirk from WP Apprentice, and welcome to the webinar, Conquering Your WordPress Theme Problems. Today we're going to tackle one of the biggest problems that all WordPress users struggle with, setting up a new WordPress theme. It's not just WordPress beginners who have this problem. Experienced WordPress users have this problem too. I've lost count of the number of themes I've set up over the years. I'm sure it's in the hundreds, and I've struggled with most of them. So I've got some definite ideas about how to approach setting up any theme and some tricks that I use whenever I work with a new WordPress theme. And today I'm going to show you those secrets that I use so that I can help you work with any WordPress theme to make your websites look great. Now, before we get started, I just want to say a few words about the format of today's presentation. This is my first Google Hangout with a large audience. I'm using a new system called Webinar Jam to put this event together. If all goes well, this should be just like a normal webinar. However, there may be a few bumps along the way because I'm working with a new system here. I fully expect there might be some choppy video at some point. Hopefully it won't be too bad. From what I've seen with other Hangouts, the video can get pixelated at times, but if you just wait it out, it usually gets better in 20 to 30 seconds, so just be patient. As I said, this is still fairly new technology that we're dealing with, but I think it's going to be worth it. During my last webinar, the Theme Mechanics webinar, I know quite a few of you were not able to log in because of limited capacity. And today that won't be a problem because Google Hangouts has no limit on capacity. And before we get started here, I'm going to give a poll. You should see this over on the right now. What part of working with themes do you find the most challenging? Go ahead and answer that at your convenience, and we're going to get to the results later on in today's webinar. So here's what we have in store for today. WordPress theme setup problems, it's not just you. This is the thing I hope that you will understand above all else is everyone struggles with this problem. It's not just you. Then I'm going to show you my 5 secrets for taming any WordPress theme. And then we're going to put those secrets into action, and I'm going to walk you through how I approach working with a new WordPress theme. So I'm going to start with a familiar story here. This should sound very familiar to anyone who's ever had a WordPress website. I've got this friend, his name is Nero. I guess friends really should be in air quotes here. Nero has a WordPress website for his business. And this is what it looks like. And his website, just to be polite, needs a little bit of help. It needs a lot of help. There are some obvious things that we could do to this website to make it look much, much better, like fixing the menu and fixing the way the text should wrap around the image but doesn't. But even with some simple tweaks to make this look more professional, it's never going to be a great-looking website. It's just too plain to be a good business website. So Nero is not a CSS guru. He does not have the ability to create CSS like we talked about in the last webinar, the WordPress Theme Mechanics. He needs to get a theme that is presentable for his business website. He knows this is one of the great things about working with WordPress is there are so many themes to choose from that he's just going to go theme shopping because there are thousands of WordPress themes. So he's convinced that if he finds the right WordPress theme, his website will be transformed. He'll have a great website. It will improve his business. His life will improve. Everything will be great if he just finds the perfect WordPress theme. So he goes theme shopping, and he ends up, well, he starts actually at the WordPress theme directory. This is where everyone should start. This is the official WordPress.org theme directory. This is the source of all of the themes that are built into the WordPress admin panel. When you go to Appearance in WordPress and search for themes, this is where they come from. With 2,400 themes to choose from, you would think that he'd be able to find something, but he decides that he doesn't want the themes everyone else is using. He wants his site to stand apart from all the other WordPress sites. So he continues searching, and there's this whole ecosystem of WordPress theme marketplaces. Once you start looking for professionally designed WordPress commercial themes, if you're willing to pay for a theme, there's no shortage of places to go. You can go to Elegant Themes, you can go to Woo Themes, you can go to Theme Forest, has 14,000 theme templates. You could spend months searching for WordPress themes at Theme Forest. But he finally ends up at Studio Press, which is the home of the Genesis theme framework, very respected WordPress theme framework. And he decides on a child theme. He finds the perfect theme. He finds the theme that he thinks is going to make his website look great. It's a child theme for Genesis. It's called Executive Pro, and it's buzzword compliant. It's based on Genesis. It's HTML5, which he knows is a good thing. It's responsive, so he knows that his theme is going to look great on a cell phone or a tablet. It's reasonably priced. It's lifetime access. It's everything you would want in a WordPress theme. And best of all, he really likes the demo site. You can't really see it here in the static image, but this is an image slider at the top, and so it slides through a number of different stories with a really nice high-resolution photo. And then there are featured content blocks right below that. So this is really a big improvement over what he already has. So he's thinking he's going to have the ultimate business website. He plunks his money down, buys this child theme along with the Genesis theme framework, and he races to install his new theme. So this is what it looks like in the admin panel when you activate a theme. And he sees that thumbnail image reminding him how great this theme looks. And he's prepared for his site to be transformed and everything's going to be great. He goes to his website after activating this new theme that he just bought, and he loads the page, and this is what he sees. Needless to say, he's a little bit disappointed. You would be forgiven for not noticing much of a difference because this is what he had, and this is what he expected to get, but this is what he ended up with. So what's the problem here? What went wrong? Is this a user problem? Does he just not have enough experience with WordPress? Is there a problem with the actual theme? Or maybe there's a problem with his website. What is the problem? And this is what we're going to talk about today. The thing I want to get across here first is that themes add a layer of complexity to WordPress. This is a big conceptual thing that anyone who is trying to build a website with WordPress needs to understand. So let me illustrate this for you. This is the WordPress that you know and hopefully love. These are the concepts that we're all familiar with from working with WordPress on a daily basis for most of us. Posts and pages, categories, tags, the media library. Occasionally you mess around with the WordPress settings. And then on the other side you've got some things that are a little bit more specialized: menus, widgets, themes, and plugins. So if you know WordPress, you know how to work with all of these elements. When you add a new theme, you're adding a layer on top of WordPress. Now you know that when you add a theme, it changes the design. You're going to change the color and the fonts and the page layouts. But when you get into working with that new theme, you're going to find out that you've got a whole nother layer of settings on top of the WordPress settings. While menus and widgets are pretty much standard in WordPress, the way they're used is really determined by the theme. So menu location and widget location are going to be controlled by the theme, and it's different with every theme handles these things differently. And then the theme might have some additional page templates and even custom post types, which I'll show you later on in this webinar. So this is a whole additional layer that you need to deal with every time you change your theme. And for some themes, it's harder than others. So even though you know WordPress, every time you change your theme, you still need to come to terms with the features of the new theme, and it's a whole nother layer to learn about. So with that out of the way, we're ready to move on to the 5 secrets. These are the secrets I use as the foundational way of approaching any new theme. I think I'm going to go, before we do this, let's look at the poll results. If you haven't voted yet, you've got like 2 seconds. Go ahead and click your answer on the right. What part of working with WordPress themes do you find the most challenging? Looks like 36% said all of the above. 33 said theme options and settings. 13 said menus and widgets. 18% said getting content in the right place. Hopefully we'll deal with all of these today. Okay, so back to the 5 secrets for taming any WordPress theme. The first thing I do is I create a test site. Really, you don't just want to activate a new theme on your WordPress site and hope for the best. It's never going to be optimal. You're always going to be disappointed. You're going to be panicked because you activated a new theme on your WordPress site and it doesn't look right, and it's your live website. And you're going to scramble around to try to make things look right before too many people see your site looking disheveled. And as a result, you never will get the theme to look the way it's supposed to look when you're working on your live website. You need to create a test website where you can work in a safe space without worrying about breaking things. And there are a couple of different ways you can do this. There's the easy way, which I recommend for most of you. And you've already got a web hosting account because you've already got a WordPress website. And most web hosting accounts allow you to set up additional domains. You don't need to get a special domain for your test website. You can create a subdomain. And this is just any subdomain name you want to use. I would use test or beta. And then the way it works is you go in your web browser to test.yourdomain.com. Now, how you do this differs depending on who your web hosting company is. So there's going to be a control panel that you log into to manage your web hosting account, and you're going to use that to set up your subdomain and then install WordPress, usually from the control panel. Most control panels will allow you to install WordPress with one click. And then once you've got that test site up and running, you upload and activate your theme the same way you would on your live website, except that you're doing it on a test website, which is a safe space where you can work without having to worry about messing up your real website. Now, if you are more adventurous, you can actually install WordPress on your Mac or PC. And you can do that with a package that installs all of the components that WordPress is built on top of. There are several different pieces of technology that WordPress is built on top of. I'm going to save those for another webinar probably. That's way more complicated than what we're going to be talking about today. This product I'm showing here is serverpress.com, works with Mac and PC, and it installs WordPress in addition to all of the different components. So this would be what I would recommend if you're trying to get WordPress running on your PC. And there are 2 different versions of this. There's a premium version that's paid, and then there's a free version. I'm positive that for 99% of you, the free version is going to be good enough for you to get started. So you may have to look around for the free version, but it's there somewhere at serverpress.com. So once you've got your test website up and running, you need some sample content, because when you install WordPress, you have the Hello World post and sample page. That's not enough to really begin experimenting with your new theme. You need to load some sample content. And most themes, most premium themes, commercial themes, come with sample content. And it's critical that you find that sample content and load it as soon as you load your theme. That's going to show you how to implement some of those features that you like so much on the demo site, the features that cause you to actually purchase the commercial theme, usually are demonstrated in the sample content. And this is just an example in the Executive Pro theme. When I unzipped the zip file that it came with, there's a folder down there at the bottom. It's the XML folder. And the XML file extension is what WordPress uses to import sample content. Now, if your theme doesn't come with sample content for some reason, you can get sample content online. WP Candy has put together a bundle of sample WordPress content that you can use to install into a new test website to get started with posts and pages. And these sample content, usually the various posts are formatted in different ways to demonstrate what different types of formatting your theme will look like. So you don't have to go creating ipsum lorem text yourself. Sample content does all of that for you. So I'm going to walk you quickly through the import process in case you don't know how this works. In WordPress, under Tools, you'll find the Import option. And then when you get to the import page, you want to click that WordPress link at the very bottom. If you're doing this for the first time, you're going to have to install a plugin. And you'll get a pop-up menu that tells you you need to install the WordPress importer. Once that's ready to go, you get this very plain screen. You click the Choose File button, and you use that to find the XML file, which will be somewhere on your computer because you downloaded it with the theme. And then it's going to ask you to assign an author for the posts. Because these posts are coming from somewhere else, who should the author be on your WordPress site? You can just go with the default here. It's a test site. It doesn't really matter. I usually just skip past this and press Submit. And then you'll see this screen where the WordPress posts and pages and sometimes menus are imported. And then if everything went the way it was supposed to, when you go look at your list of posts, you'll have all of this new content imported into your WordPress site. And this is what you can begin working with as you're setting up your WordPress theme. And so for the Executive Pro, it has examples of how image alignment works. It has an example of how the different columns work. And so if I wanted to set up columns on my real website, I would use this as the example. I would go into edit mode and I would look at the post here to see how it was set up. It's coded in a special way to have these different columns. And also you'll notice there's no sidebar, so it's using a particular page template as well to achieve that effect. Number 3 is probably the least popular step that I use. Read the documentation, seriously. The documentation is there for a reason. The documentation is going to explain how the theme works. Just knowing WordPress is not enough. The documentation explains how the theme works with WordPress. Even the most talented WordPress expert is not going to know how a new theme works because the theme designer has set things up in a very specific way that is unique to that theme. And so in the case of Executive Pro, StudioPress has very good documentation, very detailed documentation on theme setup. When I scroll down on the documentation page, there's this whole index, dozen or more links with detail on how to set up every aspect of the theme. So don't throw the documentation away once you open the box, is the point. Now, there's going to be a point during your theme setup where you run into some problem that maybe you don't understand the documentation or there's something unique about what you're trying to achieve and it's just not working the way it's supposed to. Use the theme support. That's what it's there for, just like the documentation. Most theme designers, especially if you pay for a theme, you should be expecting to get support as part of what you paid for that theme. That's what the theme designer really in most cases is charging for, is support, because WordPress is open source and all WordPress themes, which are extensions of WordPress, are technically open source. What they charge for is support. So you want to take advantage of that. And that's something when you're theme shopping you should look for. What is the support going to be like? What support forum are they using to provide support for the theme? And so StudioPress, of course, has a support forum. And this is WordPress.org. Even the free themes each have support on WordPress.org. So even if you're using a WordPress theme that you downloaded from the WordPress admin, didn't pay anything at all for it, you can go to WordPress.org forums and get support that way. Now, this last step is the most important and is the most time-consuming, and this is what we're going to spend the most time on: experimentation. You already know, you've got some basic WordPress knowledge. Now you need to apply that to your theme to get things working and looking the way they're supposed to look and work. By the way, this is also a great way to learn more about WordPress. You will almost certainly become better with working with WordPress by setting up your theme and doing some experimentation to get things to look the way they're supposed to. And you can do this because you've got this safe environment on a test website where you don't have to worry about ruining your perfectly good website that your customers and your visitors are coming to. You've got this safe space to experiment in. And so this is how I go about getting to know a new theme. This is what I do. Once I have, I've got the theme I'm pretty sure I want to work with, I set up a test website, I add the test content, I got the documentation ready and bookmarked or in another tab on my browser, and then I begin working through setting up the theme to make it look like that demo site, because I bought it for a reason, and when I installed it, it didn't look the way it looked on the demo site. This is the process of getting your website to look like what you thought you were buying, basically. So it starts with theme settings, and this, I think, in our poll was the thing that most of you found the most challenging, and this is the one that's the hardest to give advice on because it is dramatically different from theme to theme. Let me show you what I mean here. These are the theme settings for the Genesis theme. This is very minimal. There's not a lot going on in the Genesis theme settings. There's color, where I can pick a color palette, and there are some predefined color styles. And any theme maybe is going to have a dozen or fewer color styles. There's the default layout. You know, where do I want the sidebar to be, left or right, or no sidebar? And there are a few other options in this theme set. It's a very minimalist theme setting. By contrast, this is what the Woo Canvas theme settings look like. There are every single aspect of the theme can be tweaked from this page. You have way more than 3 options for the layout. You can control the footer, you can control the total site width, you can change fonts for everything, basically. Header, subheaders, your body text. There are just a ton of options. There are a dozen or so top-level menus, and each one has many, many, many sub-menus underneath. The only way you can come to terms with these is to dig in and start experimenting on your test website. This is the Flare theme that I use in the WordPress Blueprint course that we offer at WP Apprentice, and it's similar to the Canvas theme in terms of structure, but again, it's very different. Even though it's got a similar approach to having all of these different menus and submenu options with a lot of settings on each page, it's a completely different set of options. Now, the other thing I want to point out here is if you look at the admin menu on the left, for the Flare theme, theme options are under Appearance, which, by the way, I think is where they should be, because Appearance is where you work on your theme, and then under there you've got all of the different theme options. But for Canvas and for Genesis before that, there's a top-level menu that has the name of the theme. So in some cases, even finding the theme options can be a challenge when you change your theme, because they're not always in the same location. And then just to show how different things can be, this is the Headway theme. Headway is one of those WYSIWYG drag and drop visual design style themes where you see the design changes in real time. It's a little bit more like working in a graphic program, maybe a little bit more like working in Photoshop, not like working in WordPress at all. And you might think, if you're a visual designer, that something like this would be a good thing to use as your theme, but still there's a big learning curve for getting all of these different things working. Every single one of these elements has dozens of possible options. So that's a huge range of theme options, just looking at 4 different themes. So once you've come to terms with your theme options and settings, then it's time to tackle some of the more common things that you're going to see from theme to theme, like menus and widgets and page templates and possibly custom post types. And so the first thing I do when I'm setting up a new theme is I want to know where the menus are, because menu locations change from theme to theme. And most themes have at least one menu location. Many themes have multiple menu locations. And they can be anywhere. They can be in the header, they can be in the footer, they could even be in the sidebar. The only way to figure out where your menus are going to be is to experiment. So I went to set up menus on this Executive Pro theme because out of the box there are no menus set up. I didn't set up any menus. So this is what the site looked like. There's nothing at the top. There's nothing that looks like a menu. So I went, first of all, this is the way I would approach setting up menus. Under Appearance, Menus, there's a tab on the Menus page that says Manage Locations, and this is going to show how many menus your theme supports. In this case, the theme supports 2 menu locations, primary and secondary. That doesn't really tell me much. I just know there are 2 different menu locations. One's primary, one's secondary. It doesn't tell me where they are. It doesn't tell me how they're formatted. So the way to figure this out is to create a couple of different menus that I can assign to those locations. And fortunately, the test content that I imported from StudioPress actually created the menus for me. So I don't even need to create the menus. I do make a change to the menus. And the change I make is I create a new custom item that I put at the top of the menu that is the name of the menu that I'm assigning it to. And I do that so that when I go to the website to look at where the menus are, I can easily identify which menu is which location. So here you can see I've set up the primary navigation. And then I go back to Manage Locations and I assign the primary navigation to the primary menu area and the secondary navigation menu that I created to the secondary navigation menu. And then I'm ready to go load my site and see where those menus are. And when I do, I see that they're both at the top underneath the site name, but above the content. They're stacked, one on top of the other. Now, I'm not sure I would choose to do it this way if I was designing this theme. I would prefer this one of the secondary menu either to be at the top, at the very top, or in the footer. I'm not sure what's going on here. But what I do know is that this is not at all what I was expecting, because on the demo site, the menu, this nicely formatted menu with the highlighted home page, is floating off to the right next to the site name, and they're pretty much level. And then after assigning the primary and secondary menus, this looks nothing at all like what I was expecting. So, can you guess what I did? I went to the documentation. And in the documentation, the first thing I see under how to set up menus is that the primary and secondary menu are not used in the demo. And I scroll down a little bit further, and it tells me that the main navigation in the demo is actually a custom menu put in a widget area. Okay, that's a different approach. That's not something I would have expected. So that brings us to the exploration of widgets and widget areas. Now, these are sometimes called sidebars, but that's sort of misleading because widgets are not limited to the sidebar on your WordPress site. They can be in the header, they can be in the footer, they could be anywhere on the page. And in fact, as you're going to see in a second here, the home page is pretty much built, the home page of this theme is pretty much built with widgets. Now, most themes have at least one location. Some have many, and this approach is very similar to with menus, is you don't really know where those widget areas are until you begin experimenting with them. And in addition to the widget locations, where you can position your widgets, some themes ship with additional widgets, which are the things you plug into the widget areas. And those widgets provide some, in some cases, some specific functionality maybe that's part of the theme. And that would potentially be a new widget that you're not familiar with because it's not a standard WordPress widget. It's one that's added with the content. So going to the widget area in this theme that I've activated here, I'm seeing there are 10 different widget areas for this site, and they're named pretty clearly, but still I won't really know where they are in the theme until I actually start setting up some widgets. But I'm going to start with that header right because the documentation told me that's where I need to go to set up the menu the way I wanted to set it up in the previous experiment where I was trying to get my menus set up. So I pull in the custom menu widget, and I've already set up the primary navigation that I want to put up there, so I just select that from the drop-down box in the custom menu widget. And then I also go back to the menus screen on the appearance page, and I set the select menu to, I set these to no menu, basically. I'm going to get rid of the primary and secondary menus that aren't used in the demo site. I'm trying to make my site look like the demo site, so I don't want those menus. And when I go to my site and reload the page, I get that primary navigation the way I expected it. Excuse me. So it is a menu, but it's also a widget. It's a menu in a widget. And that's something I wouldn't have been able to figure out just by flailing away without reading the documentation. And it's something that probably, if I just activated this theme on a live website, would have panicked me. So there are still 9 other widget areas to come to terms with. And this is still not looking much like that demo website except for the menu that I just set up. So here's the way I go about exploring the widget area, and it's very similar to the way I explore the menu areas. I use a text widget, and I pull a text widget into each one of the widget areas, and I give it a name and some text, a title and some text, and I set the title equal to the name of the widget area, and I put the text in it equal to the name of the widget area. And I go through each one of the widget areas until I've added a text widget in each one of the widget areas. And at that point, I'm ready to go back to the theme to take a look at where those widgets are. And I know now this is the primary sidebar. It's where I would expect it to be in the sidebar. When I scroll down, I'll see that there's this after text, after entry widget. That's a widget that appears after every post. You might want to put an ad there or something. And then when I go to the home page, I see the home page, which previously was a list of posts, is now looking, well, it's not looking like the demo site, but the grid, the layout is starting to resemble the demo site. And this is where I was saying the widgets actually on this theme, the widgets pretty much control how the home page of this theme looks. So there's the slider area at the top, the home test top. The home top is where those featured posts are going to go, and there's a box here for call to action and some other three in the footer and some more features below the call to action. So the only way really to figure out how to set these up, what widgets I'm supposed to use to get them to look the right way, is to go back to the documentation. And fortunately, again, Genesis has set up some very specific documentation on how to set up the home page, including which widgets to use. And what I find from the documentation is that this widget area and the theme are designed to use a plugin that didn't come with the theme. I actually have to go and search for and install the Genesis Responsive Slider plugin. Now, I'm not sure if I could use another slider plugin or not. I would probably not expect to be able to use another slider. So I'm going to stick with the slider they told me to install. So I install that plugin. And that plugin installs this responsive slider widget, which I drag over to the home slider area. And there are almost no options except for title. So how am I supposed to set up my slider? Well, there's a link to the slider setting page. So this is yet another setting page that I have to come to terms with. It's also added the slider settings to the Genesis menu area on the left. And so there are a bunch of different options here. The good thing about this plugin is it is very configurable. I can put pretty much anything that I've got in WordPress into this slider. The downside is I have to figure out, first of all, how it works to get content from WordPress into the slider. And then I have to think about what content I want to put in the slider. And this is a challenge that a lot of people have when they're setting up their theme is maybe you bought a theme because you like the features, like the slider, but you haven't really thought much about what you're going to put in the slider. So this is where this really, during this experimentation period, is a good time to start thinking about your own website and your own web content and what content you're going to put into the different features of the theme that you're working with. And so here I've set it up to work with pages, and it works by post or page ID, which is the unique number that's assigned to each post that you put into WordPress. And this is not very user-friendly. I actually had to go hunt those down. I had to figure out which posts I wanted to put in, and then I had to find the ID number for those and put those in as a comma-separated list. But I got through it, and so I picked 3 pages, and now I'm ready. I'm pretty sure I'm going to have that slider. I go and reload my page, and this is what I see. This is not at all what I was expecting. And this leads to another lesson that you should keep in mind whenever you're theme shopping. Photos don't come with the theme. The problem here is the post that I picked to go into the slider area didn't have photos assigned because photos don't come with the theme. Now this is something to keep in mind when you're theme shopping. Is a lot of times I see these really modern themes that make great use of high-resolution photos and illustrations, and they just look phenomenal. You have to ask yourself, what would this theme look like without these photos that are being used on the demo site? Because the photos don't come with the theme. And do you have adequate photography or illustrations or images that you can use on your theme that would make the theme look comparable when you install it on your website? So I go off to my favorite stock image site and find some images that I can add as featured images to those posts. And I set up featured images on all 3 of those posts. And when I reload, I actually get a slider that looks pretty much what I expected it to look like. And the home page is actually beginning to look quite a bit more like that demo site. So now I'm ready to move on to those featured posts that are just below the slider, and there is a widget that Genesis pre-installs. I don't have to actually go install a plugin for this. It's the featured page widget, and I pull one of those for each post that I want to feature over into this home top area, which I identified when I was exploring my widget areas. There are a bunch of different settings. I can choose how big I want the image to be and what the character limit should be for displaying the post content below the image, and what I want to read more text to read. So I can set this up for every single one of those, and then when I go and reload my page, everything is looking good. Those are the featured blocks that appear before the slider. And I cheated and I reused the same 3 posts that I used in the slider, which is why you see the same image there. You would definitely not want to do this. You want to use 3 different posts. And again, this is a time for you to be thinking about the content on your website and what kind of content you're going to be featuring in these areas when you set this up for real on your real website. So then I move on to the call to action box. This is a great thing to have on your home page, a call to action. You want your visitors to do something specific, and you have to tell them what to do or they won't know. So this call to action box is a nice feature, and it uses a text widget. And there is some additional HTML code that we need to use to make it look right. And the only way I would know what code to use, again, I went to the documentation. And I really just did a cut and paste. I didn't need to actually write any code or invent any code. It was all there in the documentation. And I reload the page, and there's a nice call to action box with a button that maybe would take me to a contact page. So this home page is looking pretty good now. I want to set up the sidebar. They have a nice email feature, email subscription feature on the demo site. Uses another plugin that didn't come bundled with the theme, so I have to go search for it and install it. When I do, I get another widget installed, drag that over, set that up. Reload one of the blog pages that has the sidebar, and you can see there's the email subscription form off to the right. And so on. And this is the way it works, going through widget area by widget area until you're familiar with the locations, consulting the documentation to figure out, is there special code I need to put into a text widget? Is there a special plugin I need to install? What widget should I be using? And as I keep saying, this is really the time to start thinking about your real content, not just the text you're going to use, but photos and that sort of thing. And you can begin pulling those together while you're working on your test site. And then when you go to install this and configure it on your real website, you'll have all of the pieces together. Now, there are also page templates, and sometimes the home page won't be controlled by widgets. Sometimes the home page will be controlled by a page template that was designed specifically for the home page. This really varies from theme to theme. Page templates are ways to apply a unique layout to individual pages. Now frequently you'll see these used to control sidebar. I want the sidebar on the left on this page, I want the sidebar on the right on this page, sometimes full width. I want no sidebars on this page, but it could be any kind of layout that you can do in HTML can be done as a page template. And this is frequently a way, as I said, that a home page would be implemented. You have to create the page, then set the page template. So just to show you how this works, there's a page template for archive pages. In this theme, I create a new page, I call it archives, and there's no content in here because I know the template's going to take care of that. I load the archives page just to prove to you there's no content. This is the way it looks with the standard page template assigned. I go back into the page editor and I assign the archive template down there in the lower right. And when I reload the page, I see what the template looks like. It's basically a sitemap. They call it an archive. Now this theme also uses custom post types. If you're not familiar with custom post types, it's basically a way of creating very specialized content. It's not a post or a page, but it's like a post or a page. It's a different type of post. It's a custom post type. Frequently, you'll see this used for things like portfolios, which is how it's used in this theme. They can be used for product pages. Sometimes the slider is implemented as a custom post type. And you'll see the custom post type listed off on the admin menu to the left here. Portfolio is included as a custom post type. And you know it's a custom post type because it sounds like a type of content and you don't recognize it as being a standard WordPress thing because it was added by your theme. If you enter things into the portfolio and then you change themes to a theme that doesn't support this custom post type, your custom post types will vanish. They're not really gone. They're still in WordPress and they'll come back as soon as you activate this theme. So you can see here I enter the portfolio item the same way I would enter a post. And then off on the right, we've got what are called custom taxonomy. It's just a custom type of classification. It's very much like categories. In fact, it is a category with a different name. And then this custom post type has its own page template with no sidebars. And then there's also a way to set up an archive page, which is like a nice portfolio page. Again, went through the documentation to figure all of this out. So the thing is, every theme you install is going to be a little bit different, but the approach to figuring out how the theme works is the same. This is not about giving you a cookie cutter approach that you can use, go here, do this, do that. It really is a process of experimentation to get to know these new themes on your test site. Chris is designing a responsive site. Would you need to stay away from wide banner images? No, I think what you want to look for is you want to figure out how to set up your CSS to make your banner images responsive, and there's a technique for doing that. If you search Google for that, you can find that. You want to set the width to 100% with CSS, and then the image will scale accordingly. We talked about questions like this during the Theme Mechanics workshop, which was a 6-week course that evolved out of the last webinar that I did last year, which was Theme Mechanics. And that was more code-based. And based on the reaction I got from that webinar, everyone was very interested to find out more about how the WordPress template system works, but didn't want to know so much about the code. And the Theme Mechanics workshop actually went into more code. This webinar is kind of the flip side of that. This is for the people who just want their theme to look the way it's supposed to look without having to dig in and do any coding. No problems in Holland. Good to hear. Are you the famous WordPress Joost? Joost? Sorry. When do you look at and fool around with CSS? You fool around with CSS, 1, when you're comfortable fooling around with CSS, 2, when you've set up a child theme for your parent theme, which I also talk about in the Theme Mechanics webinar, and 3, when you're happy with the theme structure and you just want to make some design changes. You can create a whole child theme just by editing the CSS. And as I was saying, this is what we talked about in the Theme Mechanics webinar and workshop. So for the theme I showed at the beginning, Nero's Problem business website, if he had someone, a talented CSS person, he could have gotten a beautiful looking website from that default 2012 theme just by customizing the CSS. CSS controls every aspect of the visual design. So if you're a visual designer and you're comfortable with CSS, create a child theme and just go from there. Looking through the questions here. I assume that CSS becomes useless when switching themes. Well, yes, probably in most cases. The CSS is applying styles to HTML elements, which is the structure of the page, the bones of the page, so to speak. And so the CSS is using specific selectors to select HTML elements. So yes, just using a style sheet from another theme and putting it into a new theme is not going to work. Is there a favorite place I have for finding a variety of images? I have pretty much settled on Big Stock Photo. There are so many photo places these days that really there's just, you've got plenty to choose from. The thing I stay away from is just going to Google Images and grabbing images randomly. That's a good way to get a takedown letter from Getty Images. Okay, so Hippie Chick wants to know more about code. How can you find out about the fall seminar? I assume you're talking about the WordPress theme mechanics. Send me an email, because I can't see your email address. Just reply to one of the emails you got after signing up for this webinar, and I can get you more information on how to sign up for the theme mechanics webinar or workshop. Christopher wants to know, would I create a child theme before working on the theme I used today? If you are just going to do the standard theme setup, as I showed you today, there is really no need to create a child theme. If you get to the point, though, where you are going to be editing CSS or changing any of the templates or creating a custom template, that's when you want to create a child theme. So anytime you think you're going to change anything from the standard theme, you would create a child theme, make the changes to the child theme, And that way, when your parent theme gets updated, your changes are not overwritten. And as I said, I show how to set up the child theme in that theme mechanics workshop. There were, I'm not sure if Hippie Chick was asking about the workshop or the webinar. There are two things. I did a webinar that was 1 hour, and then I did 5 additional hours after that. The webinar is part of this WordPress website blueprint bundle that you see off to the right. And that's where I get into basically how the template system works, and I show you how to create a child theme in that. And that's part of the course. Okay, Yoast is the famous Yoast from Holland, but not the famous Yoast from Holland. Yes, I was referring to the SEO and analytics Yoast. Paul wants to know if the headway theme is worth looking into. You know, it's really a personal preference. If you are into, you know, working with that kind of interface, if you're like a Photoshop person, you can tell I'm not, by the way I say that, then maybe. One of the problems I have is, as I was trying to illustrate today, is working with any WordPress theme has a big learning curve, and it really is different from theme to theme. I find that the skills you would pick up from working with Headway really don't translate well to other WordPress themes. So even though every theme is different, you get into this rhythm of working with different themes. So when you get a new theme, you can get up to speed on it pretty quickly once you've worked with a few WordPress themes. Headway is a whole different animal. It's just a whole different way of setting up your WordPress theme. And for some people, it's going to be a great solution. I can't really, without knowing you very well, I can't really give you a good answer on that. Sorry. Dolly says she's comfortable with CSS. It's the PHP that throws her off. You can do a lot with just CSS. As I went through in the workshop and the webinar, we created a whole child theme with just CSS. PHP, you can do pretty good work with almost no PHP. Okay, Richard tried Headway and found it complicated. I'm not surprised by that. Okay, so apparently there is a problem with the shopping cart. I said the last time I offered this deal, the shopping cart melted down. And I've been able to call it up just now. The shopping cart may be slow because this is, as I said, the best price. So I would say I've got your comment is noted. I will look into that and get back to you. I would go ahead and try it again in a few minutes. I'm going to keep this deal open for the remainder of the day. So you've all got some time to dig in and look at this page and figure out whether it's right for you or not. Oh, saxophone quartet arrangement. That's even better than writing an SEO plugin. I love jazz. Seriously, I'm being sincere. Karen wants to know how she can make a big header even with fully customized site like Divi, which I guess is from Elegant Themes. I would say I get questions like this all the time about themes that I've never heard of, because there are, as we've seen, tens of thousands of themes, and it's impossible to know them all. That's a classic thing I would take to the Elegant Themes support forum, and the developers should be able to help you with that question. Okay, S wants the URL. I'm not sure what you're looking for the URL for. The shopping cart has apparently made a comeback, so feel free to give it a try. And Yoast is playing classical in addition to jazz, which I appreciate, but I am more partisan to jazz. That's just the way I am. Richard asks if I've worked with Maya Shop. I'm guessing that's a shopping cart plugin. I would have to say the answer to that is no. And Alan is reporting the audio and video is great on Safari for Mac. That's good to hear. I guess it's been bumpy for some of you. My question to you, I should have set this up as a poll, is do you think that this webinar approach, if you've been to my other webinars, was a good approach? And should I keep doing them this way instead of using GoToWebinar? Oh, Bruce and S have asked for links to the offer. There, you should see it on the right hand. If you're looking at the chat window, you probably won't see it. Here, let me try to pop it up again. On the right, there are tabs, and if you click on pop-ins, you should probably see. Richard asks about WooCommerce. Have not worked with WooCommerce personally, but it has pretty much emerged as kind of the standard. There are all manner of extensions to build on top of WooCommerce to connect it with everything. It's probably the first thing I would look into as for a shopping cart. Now, what I'm going to do, since I've got quite a few of you asking about the the WordPress theme mechanics workshop, is I actually have a contest that is underway right now. I'm going to give away 3 copies of that this month, and I will send an email follow-up when the replay of this is ready, assuming that the replay of this is properly recorded and presentable and that the audio is good. And when I do that, I'll send more information on how you can enter the contest to possibly win the Theme Mechanics Workshop. All 6 hours of it. Daryl confirms if you click on the pop-ins tab on the right, you'll see the offer for the WordPress website blueprint. Thanks, Richard. And Yoast, not that Yoast, the other Yoast from Holland. I'm sure there are a lot of Yoasts in Holland. Confirms that WooCommerce is a great choice. Nancy wants to know what the easiest theme to use is if you're just getting started. You know, I think the easiest thing to work with is one of the default themes. Even though they won't necessarily look the best, they're going to get you up to speed with working with the basic concepts, so that when you install a fancier theme, you'll know something about how themes work. I really like the new 2014 theme. If you set up the images right, I think it looks nice. I like some of the little features like the tab icon for tags. I've heard mixed things about 2014. I don't know why people are so critical about it. I think it's a really nice looking theme. So I'd go with one of the 20s to get started. Certainly before shelling out any money and investing in a commercial theme. Okay, Bruce is saying there's no offer in the pop-ins tab on Chrome. What I'm going to do here at the end is I'm going to redirect everyone who's on this session. Before I shut down, I will redirect your browsers to that page. So if you just hang on here and leave your browser open, you'll be redirected to that page as soon as I'm through answering questions. Alan wants to know about user roles, admin, editor, etc. That's covered in pretty good detail in the WordPress Essentials course. There is a lesson on user roles. And I'm happy to answer any questions about that lesson in the member area, since I get into that in some detail. Thanks, Michael. Glad you found it helpful. Dan, we're working on a replay. I'll send an email if everything went as planned. Bruno, yes, the main topic is wrapped up. I'm just answering questions now. Thanks, Christopher, for putting that link in there. If I was more prepared, I probably would have done that myself. McQuarnas, I hope I'm saying that right. We just had a time change in the US on Sunday where we went to this weird thing called daylight savings time, and it changes our GMT offset. So instead of -8, we're now -7 for the next 6 months. I've had a couple other comments like that from global users who are not familiar with the peculiarities of the time system in the US. Okay, it's looking like I've got through most of those questions. I will, as I said, be sending an email follow-up to everyone, letting them know that the replay is available. I'll probably post slides with that as well. And now, since some of you are having trouble getting to that special offer, if all goes well, I'm going to redirect you. So just hang on in your browser. Thanks, everyone, for turning up. I appreciate it. Hopefully, there weren't too many technical problems. It seems like most of you really enjoyed the session. I'm glad you found it useful. And we're going to be doing more of these in the future. And I think I'm probably going to give Google Hangouts and Webinar Jam another try. I think at least the Q&A seemed to go a lot more smoothly than it did on the old system, GoToWebinar. So have a great day and a great week, everyone. I'm going to redirect you to that offer right now, and we will see you soon.